This is day 5 of the August 87 7-day retreat. Since we didn't get to it yesterday, we will at the beginning take up the question of effort. Several people have since then brought it up in meetings. Seems to be a question for many people, because many of us have previously or are still presently training at spiritual training centers, Zen centers, where great stress is laid upon effort, exertion. Remember myself, just as I said this word, when I used to teach at another center, or with a small group at our home, I loved to read a piece by a Zen master in which the word exertion came up at least 12 times. And somebody, the first time I did this at home with a small group, said, "I just love to hear you say the word exertion." Can't quite remember the quotes. Several of you may know it. It says, even a leaf falling is a manifestation of exertion. Now, this is a translation from the Japanese. We don't know what the Japanese word is. If, in fact, with this word is meant the manifestation of energy, of boundless energy, then that is so. Everything is the manifestation of energy. We've often said it here. I read it in a reliable botanical source, that one blade of grass coming through the ground has the power of lifting or displacing, pushing aside 450 pounds of soil. One blade of grass. Which is staggering. But I don't think this grass thinks I must exert myself to do this. It grows. It grows. It's the manifestation of energy. The energy of all of life. We have been trained, not just in spiritual or Zen training centers, to exert ourselves. This is written large in our education. I don't know whether as much in this country, certainly country I grew up, but in this country too, maybe not for the same aims, for different ones, to get ahead, to get to the top, to achieve, to excel, to compete, to exert oneself, to put effort into what one is doing. All the athletic competitions have to do with the effort to win, to excel, to do better. And it's in our bloodstream, in our musculature, this thought of having to exert power, energy to do what we're doing, to get better. In bending over, There's the thought, I must exert myself to reach my toes. And if one time gives some gentle attention to this, bending over, and doesn't try to reach one's toes, just pays attention to the muscles, the joints, the tendons. I don't mean all of these things individual, but the whole system. And is aware of this command, this mental, physical command to exert oneself, and the tensions that are there in doing this exercise, because the command is remembered. May not even be expressed right now, but in doing it, it's in there, it's remembered. And then in noticing the tensions and the strain, and wondering whether it has to be there, and feeling the relaxation, because it doesn't have to be there, one wonders about it. Then the whole movement of bending over with the hands toward the ground, toward the feet, becomes a completely new thing. And one may find to one's surprise that the body bends much easier, much farther. Differently. When all the I must, I have to, I need to expend effort on this, I get to get there, I have to get there because this is the completion of the exercise, all of this complex of aspiration and compulsion, when that is noticed, it needs to be noticed first. That's always the first step, to be aware of what's going on. Without judgment, gently, interestedly, openly. And then thoughts and tensions can indeed drop in this gentle awareness, which has no aspiration or goal or compulsion. It just sheds light on what's going on. And then what's going on has the freedom to undergo a change. Yesterday we mentioned people's assertions that even getting up out of bed is an effort. That's a nice thing one can watch in this retreat. What constitutes this feeling of effort in getting up in the morning? In this setting here that we have with a schedule, people aren't waking up on their own. There's a bell that's rung, hopefully quite gently, but maybe never too gentle for one who's involved or embedded in the relaxation of sleep, the comfort of sleep. Then the bell may be a jarring thing, and one wakes up. What's next? Or what happens at this moment? One wakes up. Is there immediately a thought, oh God. Maybe more than that. Annoyance, maybe real annoyance, resentment about being woken up. And with that, the thought of the niceness of continuing with what had happened, with what one has been woken up from, imagining the comfort, the warmth of continuing under the blanket in the bed. Imagination of that, and now the thought that won't continue, I have to get up. Maybe an imagination of the coldness of the room. One is still warm under the blanket, but one can imagine that it's cold out there. And that thought has power, has an effect. There may be the scanning of what is this day going to bring me, and there may be nothing much exciting on the menu. Just more of the same. Maybe not just more of the same, but unpleasant things one does not look forward to at all. One would rather avoid by zipping up the mummy bag, staying there, not facing what may be out there waiting for one, on the job, in the family, or here in the sitting hall. So these thoughts have an effect, don't they? They have impact. The thought, on the one hand, of continuing what is pleasant and comforting, lulling, and the thought of what awaits one as one gets up and goes to work or wherever. There's conflict between these two things. And the conflict saps energy like a dry sponge. The resistance, the annoyance, the maybe anger, or all of that drains the body and the mind. Actually, the purely physical effort or energy needed to step out of bed is the same whether one likes to do what one is going to do or not. There's no difference in the physical, muscular energy or whatever it is needed to step out. It's a little bit more needed if you sleep on the floor, like here, than if you sleep on a bed. It's a little easier. You can roll out a little bit with a little bit less exertion. What makes a lot of difference is thought. I remember as a child, there were 2 days of the year where one literally popped out of bed, and that was the birthday and Christmas, when there were gifts and sweets to be had later on. I'm wondering right now whether it's possible to get up with a minimum of thoughts, either about the continuation of the comfort nor about the beginning of the discomfort of what this day may bring. And just get up. Just get up. I'm not just wondering about it. It is possible. It's an amazing revelation that when one just gets up, finished with the comfort and not pursuing thoughts of further comfort, and not pursuing thoughts of what the day may bring, that the mind just completely with this whole process of getting up, maybe some stretching exercises, stretching and bending, and just wondering about each moment and being with it, whether there is any effort of the kind we've been talking about. There's energy in stretching and bending and energy in getting up, but it's nothing to be overcome, nothing to be resisted, nothing to be fought or battled. Nothing to be renounced, because if the thought doesn't paint the picture continuously of the comfort and warmth of the bed, then it doesn't have to be renounced. The thought is not there, so it's finished. Or, if one doesn't have to get up, there's no reason, I may be tired, gone to bed late, not have slept during the night, have done a lot of work the previous day, and obviously the body is very tired, then why make a problem out of sleeping some more? Nobody here has to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, except the person who wakes everybody up. Because there are meetings going on. If you ever come back for a retreat, don't sit in the A or B group. Sit over this side or in the middle. Then, at least in the beginning, the meetings will happen late. Eventually it shifts. But even if one sleeps through and a meeting has been missed, you know that you can come to a meeting later on. There's no harsh discipline to teach one to get up in the morning. I talked about this with somebody, and that person said, no, but then I feel guilty. If I stay in bed while the others get up, or even if I stay in bed too long on a Saturday, I start feeling guilty. So here's, again, something to look at, something very rich to look at, guilt feelings. What are they? Where do they come from? What are their impact and their consequences on this moment-to-moment living? Can one possibly be aware and with what one is doing and the wholeness of the sky and earth if one feels guilty? One can't. Very, very heavy pressure and burden. Locking into more recent and older and older and older and more ancient guilt feelings. Which are, I should be doing something other than what I'm doing. And therefore neither enjoying the sleep, neither with that, nor doing what one cannot get oneself to do. See how we create incredible conflicts. And these drain incredible energies. Is one interested to look at guilt as it arises? See what it does. Not say I want to get rid of it, I shouldn't have it, and when there's guilt about having guilt. But just shed light, see it, feel it. live with it alertly, attentively. Not try to push it away and not wallow in it either. Give it this gentle attention, and then it will reveal vastly what it is all about. Me, my image, what people think of me, what I should be doing, what I've never done right, what I've done wrong, being bad, since one maybe can remember all the attitudes of others that have come toward one already as a child, incorporated, introjected, internalized, remembered, or not remembered, but there in the whole system. And also maybe the realization dawns that this does not have to continue. Because this is a new, fresh day. When the attention, the energy is in this new freshness, in the listening, and being with whatever there is, then the past is only minimally operating. Memories are only minimally operating. And then there's no conflict with the past. There's only what is now, and it's clear what needs to be done or not needs to be done. It's all right to sleep without guilt feelings. And it's also all right to get up and one may not topple over from the expected exhaustion. It may not work out this way. One may not be as tired as one had thought one was. Thought can make us terribly tired. And the absence of that thought can make one fresh. So when one has the feeling that one has to apply effort to the sitting or the walking or to the work, can one watch it, not take it for granted. Watch it in its subtlest aspects. The way one holds a tool is one grabbing it with much more power than is needed. Is one shoveling or cutting a carrot with much more energy than needed? Is one holding the pen and writing with much more effort than is needed? Is one doing everything, walking with much more energy than needed? Because one thinks one has to apply oneself. And the beauty of unforced movement is lost. But it comes when this is seen and when these thoughts drop out of the mind and the muscles. There's this famous saying of an old Chinese man who, upon some kind of, I don't know what happened to him. There was a freedom of no division, no effort, no resistance, and saying marvelous, supernatural activity, carrying water, chopping firewood. just not thinking, oh my God, what a chore I have to do. Why can't somebody else do it? They don't they don't do it, but I take the responsibility all the time. So, these thoughts can make the water 10 times as heavy. So why do we feel that we have to put out effort? Let's not take it for granted that we have to, while conceding, admitting, or realizing that energy is used in everything we do. And see if one can't uncover resistance at every corner. Because the feeling I must make effort, I must use willpower, goes together with resistance. Sounds as though I was making an assertion. I'm not. Test it out for yourself, whether this is so. Whether there is any need for extra exertion when there is no resistance to doing what one is doing. And it takes subtle awareness, because the resistance can be so subtle or so habitual that one doesn't recognize it, doesn't see it, unless one really questions and looks carefully. Organismically, it's not just in the head. As we said, it's throughout the whole body. Maybe this is why all of these body work therapies are becoming so popular and so much in demand, because with this one may become aware of tensions held for decades. And emotions that are held in these tensions, or commands, parental or teacher or one's own commands, being embedded in these tensions. This is a marvelous thing, to allow awareness to permeate the whole system, from top to toe. Nothing excluded, nothing braced against, nothing protected. If one finds one is protecting, why? And gently looking at it, not with a crowbar. The other topic for the talk today is relationship. People have brought up relationship problems. Which is, I think, one of the most serious problems we human beings are caught up in. The problem of relationship. How to relate. What is relationship? Why do we relate the way we do? Why do we have difficulties in relationship? Not taking for granted that there is no ideal relationship or all these, there's a word for a glib statement, or pat statements that we have which prevent examination. But to give one's energy and attention to how one relates with people. The questions brought up, 3 or 4 people, maybe more, were all about intimate relationships. But it concerns to see how we're relating, how are we relating to each other, to watch it, observe it, moment to moment. Concerns all relationship with people and with things. We've talked a lot about self-image during the beginning talks. The power of the self-image. How it hurts when one doesn't get one's way or is slighted or browbeaten or insulted or ignored, criticized, not accepted, or when one is well received, liked, admired, flattered. How the whole feeling about oneself changes drastically depending on how someone relates to one, what somebody says to one, how one is treated. And this is largely due to how one sees oneself and has always seen oneself. The idea or image of oneself. To watch that, to see it for oneself. So it isn't just a theory that somebody spouts. It's something to discover for oneself, and the best time to discover it is in relationship. One may be very withdrawn, solitary person, and create a kind of artificial calm. But stepping back into a relationship, that calm may be blown. Because nothing in an artificial withdrawal or solitude is being challenged or resolved. Not usually. It must be a very unusual case if this is so. Because we don't find out about all of our million reactions until we're challenged or we mentioned treated well or treated ill. Then we can see all this enormous reservoir of reaction and question it maybe. If you received our last newsletter, there was a brief question and answer exchange that originated in a workshop for students who came here to find out about this place, find out about meditation, and it was really a marvelous thing to see a very young person, maybe not even 20 years old, seriously concerned whether relationship had to be this constant reacting, or whether there couldn't be something creative or fresh in a relationship. But in order to find that out, not to pursue the ideal, the freshness, the spontaneity, the beauty of relationship, but to see how one actually relates and to begin to shed light on that, be aware of it. And maybe in this awareness, not go on with it so automatically, with such momentum of habit. Just because one always has reacted like this does not mean one has to continue reacting. That's the beauty of it. One does not have to. One can watch. Only at the moment of wanting to hit back, that's the last thing one wants to do, is watch. One wants that release of revenge. I'm using a heavy word. Find a lighter one, if you will. But we have these. It's almost instinctual to need to have an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. It's enshrined in a holy book. It's amazing, isn't it? Then how will one question it if the holy book says to proceed that way? But one can also question the holy book. So, instead of perpetuating what has gone on in human relations since time immemorial, revenge, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, can one question it as it happens in one's daily relationship with one's husband or wife or children, friends that one lives with, at the workplace, wherever. Become aware, notice how if one has been hurt, something is remembered that wants some kind of a revenge. One may not be aware of it and deny it and say, I'm not this kind of a person, I'm forgiving. But beware of these ideals because they hide what we're actually doing. One can be so preoccupied with the idea of what one is that one ignores, denies, or just does not see what one actually does. That goes for all of us. So how will one come upon this subtle, gentle awareness that will reveal how we're actually talking to each other and thinking about each other and acting, gesturing, looking at each other? I think it does come into being when the ideals and the images abate. When they are seen, and they're seen for their hiding power, their deceiving power. If one really wants to get at the truth of how one lives with each other, the bare truth, not the romantic, rosy idea of it. Is one willing to do that? Is one interested? Just to observe and to learn in the moment-to-moment observation and not store it up for future use, future reference, but to see and let go so that one is fresh to see the next moment. So just as one has images about oneself, doesn't one have images of the others? One's wife or husband, one's children, one's friends, one's employer or employees. almost of anybody. Images rather than finding out who we are together right now in relationship. A freshness of inquiry, of looking, of listening. Does one see that one has images of the other? Images meaning remembered things. What this person was for one once, or did to one once, or yesterday. What he's like, the knowledge about it from lots of past experiences. I'm not saying that these memories are false, but they're memories. And this person at this moment may not be like the memories describe him or her, or project onto him or her. And does one see that by projecting images onto another person, one cannot be in touch with that person? It's impossible. One can only be in touch with the idea of this person, with the memory of that person. Thus preventing an alive, viable relationship. How does one look at another person? How does one see another person? Can one ask these questions and look and see? In looking at another person, apart from the memory we just talked about of what we know about her or him, does one look at this person in terms of what one wants this person to do for me, to be for me, to be like? Isn't this how we look at each other most of the time? What can I get out of him or her? Or, I want him to be like this, not like that. I want her to be like that, but not like this. It's always this self-reference, isn't it, with which we see others. Maybe not always, one shouldn't say that, but a lot of the time. And can one notice that? Just see it. Discover that this is so, and therefore a possibility to be free from that tremendous mold of seeing others in terms of what one wants from them. Even if one may not be free of it, at first sight, can one see whether this is so? And that in that one does not see that person. One is not in touch, one is not related. One isn't open to find out what she wants to say, what he wants to express. Anyone who has children or has had children knows how one has jumped on children, knowing already what they have done, without finding out. If one thinks about it, one's heart can ache. And not just with children, with everyone. The violence that we do to each other because of the capacity of the brain to store memory images and to imagine what it would like to have. The capacity to compare this person with another who is so much more desirable. Why can't my friend or my husband or wife be like so-and-so? If the brain couldn't do all of that, we wouldn't do it. It wouldn't happen. It probably would be much more clearly perceptive of what's there. Can one see the impact of comparison? Comparing A with B? Wishing B would be like A? And all the emotions that come up. The yearning for B and the dissatisfaction with A. And one can ask, I don't know the answer for sure, but one can ask whether the mind can stop comparing. Not forever, we will never talk about forever. That's another thing that the brain can do. Think about this always and forever and for all eternity. But that's imagination. At the moment of comparison, can it be noticed, discovered, and halted? Or is the momentum so strong that even though one notices, one says, the hell with it, and one goes on with it? That's what often happens in awareness, the momentum of the drive to pursue something is so strong, so fraught with desire or expectation that it's like an avalanche covering up the awareness. One doesn't want to look because one doesn't want to see what it may reveal. Can one also be aware of that? Step by step, see the whole thing. And then take a fresh look at the person right next to one. Is that possible? Of course it's possible. If it isn't possible, we'll all continue in our mutual antagonisms and conflicts on a small scale and on a global scale. Devising means and thinking of ways of doing away with each other. So how does one see the person next to one, the person one is living with? Does one see this person as one's property? Owning each other. When that is the case, when there's strong feelings of ownership, of possession, or possessiveness, then there's inevitable jealousy. Person engages in a lively conversation with someone else, has jealousy. He or she is only supposed to be interested in me. The pain of it, the agony of it, the fear of losing what one wishes to possess forever. Does one look at a person as one's way of assuaging one's pain of loneliness? Does one want to be with someone so one doesn't need to feel loneliness? Is that why most people begin living together so they don't feel lonely? And then the fear of losing that person, because then one would be faced with this feeling of loneliness again. So even though one is living together, can one be in touch with the feeling of loneliness? Because it's there. No other person, no matter how exuberating or charming or interesting, can ultimately take this away from one. It has to be resolved in a different manner altogether, on a different level, in which this aching, lonely me is understood, is seen for what it is. And that it cannot heal itself through any means of adding to it, grabbing onto or possessing things or people. Healing, the word healing means being whole. And the me cannot be whole. It is apart. It has separated itself from the whole. And therefore it aches and is lonely and wants others to substitute for what? So in living together, can one face all of these things together? Maybe the other person is not interested. Maybe not interested at this moment, depending on how one approaches the whole thing. Is one approaching with threat or with domination? We've all been dominated so much in our early life that we don't want any of it when what we feel is living on our own. So we may reject someone's approach to look at something together or discuss something just because we feel this person's trying to dominate me with their thing. So, how will one talk with each other? How will one communicate with each other? So that one does not evoke old images in the other. I don't know whether that's possible. But one can ask the question and look and try. Watch oneself. Does one sound like a mother, like a father, like a teacher? One may not, and it may be projected onto one, but one may also sound like that. One may not know it because one has the feeling one isn't like that. So can one listen to how one talks and discusses? Not just listen to the other, also listen to oneself. Just listen. The openness of no fixed image, no fixed position or attitude. Just beginning from not knowing. But if the other person doesn't want to, then can one leave the person alone with that? Give that person space to not want to do this. At this point in time, maybe only. I think it depends so much what is really operating in oneself. Is it ideas and principles? Or is it love and affection? And not the idea of love and affection or the principle of compassion, but the real thing. And that only comes into being when I don't want to use the other person for my own ends. See in him or her what can they do for me. Then one may work out a working relationship, particularly if one can agree what one will do for each other and stick to that. That can be a good working relationship, but it may be bare of love. Love doesn't sprout on principles. It may come into being when one wants nothing for oneself. One feels the whole. The openness to everything that is. As it is, not as I want it to be for myself. Can one look at all of that? And not say, well, I don't seem to be made for this, or I'm too cynical, I'm too this or that. Then one is cast in the mold of one's own thoughts. What is everybody? What is everything? What am I? When I start from not knowing. Of course I know a lot, but that's not what's going on right now. That's clear, isn't it? So every moment there can be a fresh listening, a fresh looking. Alone or together. We will end here for today.